Welcome back to another episode of Cobra Kai Companion, and I am Peter. And you guys, one of my favorite type of episodes is speaking with the writers. And one of my favorite episodes of season 4 is 406 Kicks Get Chicks with Mattea Greene. How you doing, Mattea?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just kind of want to throw this out there as like a bit of a flex, but I have met you twice now in person
Yes.
in IRL. Um, I don't know if you listened to the pod or like because I did a recap of the Paley Fest event, and I mentioned how when I was after the whole panel thing, I saw Joe and Lawan. I went to go say hello, and then I saw Zach Arnold. I did not see your face because I believe your back was behind me. So I was like, I'm gonna go introduce myself to Zach. So when I did so, you're like, no, yeah, I know you. I took a picture for you with the guys. And I was like, oh, and that's when I recognized you. So I felt like a complete idiot that I didn't realize who Zach was standing next to.
That's okay. I think I was wearing a mask too. It makes it tough for everyone.
Could have been
Yeah.
absolutely. And Tamlin was there. She was wearing a mask. And so yeah, I do wonder who else was there that I didn't even know who, for those that are right. Apparently there was a legacy actor that appeared at the after party I just heard about. So
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about those, but yes, there were
yeah.
a few people at the after party. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't believe that was on the previous recording, so that's why I left it at that.
Mhm.
So yeah, fun stuff you guys get to do.
Yeah.
Um, so now when we first met, it was at Sony, and you were John Josh and Hayden's assistant at the time.
Yeah, I think that would have been right after we finished filming season two. So I started on the show right after season one came out, right when we were starting season two as the showrunner's assistant. Got to go to set with them and everything. It was great. And then season three, I was the writer's assistant and I got to write a freelance episode, episode 308, The Good, the Bad, and the Badass. And then season four, I was a member of the writing staff.
Now, were you always into writing? Because if I'm not mistaken, did you used to do like a stand up as well?
Yes, I did stand up for about 3 or 4 years until COVID hit, and then took a break and haven't been back since. But yeah, I started writing right when I graduated college, so right when I was 21 years old, and have been working in the industry ever since then.
Now, were you was writing and comedy always like a thing growing up? Did you do any theater or anything like that in school, high school?
No, I grew up, very, very small town in Florida. We had a theater program, but it was just like a fun thing. It wasn't like a thing where you could have a career in this. I genuinely had no idea that like TV writing and movie writing was a thing. I had never seen a stand-up show. I did not know it existed until I went to college to study political science, and I went to school in Chicago. And we got to go to a few more comedy shows there, and I started to think about like, oh, this is an actual career that people get to do, spend their whole lives doing, and that kind of hit it for me.
Do you have or did you have any influences or inspirations in comedy? Like, do you I don't want to assume that people take material from other people or you were inspired by somebody. How did you kind of come up with like your style in stand up?
So I think for me, I grew up reading Douglas Adams a lot in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he had just a very like smart sense of humor, like very wry, very dry. And up until then, as a little kid, you think funny is like fart jokes, and that's it. And so I was like, oh, you can be smart and funny. And so I think that was kind of my big inspiration growing up, and that's what I try to take into my writing now.
And weren't you also on a debate team as well?
I was on a debate team, and I'm sure once we get into the episode, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Yeah, I was on a debate team. We were one of the only debate teams. Like, we did not have like, you talk to kids from the Northeast, and they have these incredible like debate infrastructures where it's kids from all over the country coming in and debating. Ours was just a very like rinky dink, like, two high schools in town. I won the county championship because the other person didn't show up.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
I just won by default. It was great. And I put it on my college applications and everything.
Yeah, because it's not a lie. Like, yeah, I won,
I won.
so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how you won, you won. I feel as Mariel Woods maybe told me that you were the debate team because I mentioned to somebody, I was like, oh, because we were talking about Devin. I was like, oh, is that because like John and Hayden were on the debate team? and I believe it was Mario, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. They're like, oh well, Mateo was too. I was like, oh okay, well because that makes it because she wrote Kicks Get Chicks.
Yeah, that was the inspiration. I did debate a girl who was very intense and very just so into it, and she like was not doing very well. And she would like started moving closer and closer to me, and I would like she was getting very upset, very angry, and I was like, oh, I think she might like take a swing at me here. And when we were looking for like a new female character to add to the cast, I kind of remembered that. And I thought, well, that's a different type of character we've seen, someone who is very intense and very aggressive, but just hasn't channeled it into karate yet. And
Yeah.
someone who could be, interesting foil for Johnny.
Now, after college and you kind of started on your path, how did you end up being an assistant in the industry here?
Yeah, well, when I was, just Googling, looking for like how on earth do you break into television, there are very few TV writers and very many people who would like to do it. So I just kind of Googled like how do you break in? And everyone said get an assistant job at an agency. They're hiring all the time. And most of them are pretty big. So I was able to get an assistant job right out of college, pretty much working for Renee Kurtz at CIA. And I worked for her for about a year and a half, and then went to work for one of her clients for a little bit, and then ended up on Cobra Kai. And I think it's a really great experience for anyone who wants to get into entertainment. Working at an agency, it can be tough. It's not always an easy environment, but you learn so much about the business side and you make a lot of contacts. So yeah, that's how I ended up on Cobra Kai.
No, that's awesome. I wonder if 39 is too old to try to do something like that. But I guess I'd have to wait for the youngest to get out of the house, which is going to be like another 16 years. So maybe I'm already past that time.
It's never too
Um,
late.
so okay, well let's see if I'm still in touch with like John, Josh, and Hayden in 16 years. We'll see. Like, hey, you guys need a new assistant? Um, now with season three, if I'm not mistaken, again, there's just so many details, and I believe Johnny's email to Allie, was that not that was you, correct?
Yes, yes. In I think it's in episode 306, where Johnny is trying to compose a Facebook message to Ali, and his first attempt is just like pages of all caps. And for that season, for seasons 2 and 3, anytime you see like text on screen, most of that they would just pass off to me to write because I was the assistant and they were all too busy to do it. So I got that one, and I was told to have fun with it. So I just sort of tried to put myself in Johnny's headspace and started rambling, and that's what showed up on screen.
How is it writing for Johnny and getting in his headspace?
I enjoy it actually. He's one of my favorite characters to write for because he's someone who, wants to be a good person and just doesn't know the right thing to say all the time. And, there's no malice in it most of the time. He's just like not with it. And that for me is just really great comedy.
Yeah, no, I wanted to kind of like bring that up initially because 406 has a lot of those type of moments of Johnny from previous seasons. With the good, the bad, and the badass. I thought it was really interesting because the image of Priest, Johnny, and Daniel inside what we didn't know at the time was like a um not a town hall meeting. Was it? Was it like a town hall meeting kind
Yeah,
of?
like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
city council. Yeah.
And so we thought that it was like a legal hearing or something, but I guess we weren't too far off. But that was one of the first images released prior to season three, so we were just like, what is even going on? We kind of talked about this before we started recording, but what do you kind of remember in terms of like the beats that you were supposed to hit in breaking this episode?
In 308, yeah. So
Yes.
308 went through a lot of changes because we kept moving things around with the story, and so we ended up, I think, rewriting it, just before production. And that one, the scene of them trying to get the tournament back on, and the senseis all fighting and messing it up, and then the kids coming in to save it. That's something that John, Josh, and Hayden had wanted to do from the beginning of the season, and it had been in a different episode, and then got moved into mine. And so that was a really fun one to get to write. It was very exciting because it's just such a big scene and just so many like different clashing people. We knew we wanted to start with, Kreese sort of sweetening them up, and then just Johnny and Daniel kind of sniping at each other and just getting very childish very quickly. And then the moment of Miguel coming in and then Sam coming in to help, that was another big moment. And that kind of encapsulates a lot of what we want to do in the show, which is that these kids are the ones who kind of know the right thing to do and are the ones who are going to save the adults in a way.
There's a line that Kreese says, and it's something that I feel like a lot of veterans say, but hearing it from Kreese made me kind of like, "Ah, do I want to continue saying that now?" Like, but basically, when he addresses like council person Roberts, and she thanks him for his service, he's like, "It was an honor to serve." I'm like, I say that, like, and like the way he used it, kind of like what you're saying is like, I don't know if I like saying that now, but
He
yeah,
does mean it, you know. I think that was the biggest honor of his lifetime, and he's someone who cares about honor. So I think he means it, but I think he also knows what it means to other people, and he's not above using it to his
right,
advantage.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's just I like I believe he kind of gives a look to the other guys too, sitting there since he got to go first. I'm trying to think. I believe also in that episode it's the same episode that Yasmin and Dimitri are caught kissing in the hallway.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
can you talk about that? Because I believe that was the first time we got to see that. Obviously, it looked like it was being set up throughout that the earlier in the season as well.
Yeah, that is another thing that coming into season three, the guys really wanted to do. You know, Annalisa Cochran, the actress, she's great, and they always knew they wanted to bring her back. And as Dimitri's stock kind of rises in the aftermath of the season two fight, we thought just the funniest possible thing to happen would be for him to get this incredible girlfriend. And you know, I think Dimitri has a line in one of the episodes where it's like, okay, my stock is on the rise and yours is falling. We're going to meet in the middle somewhere. And that is exactly what happens.
Yeah. And it's just him being himself, So advice that Hawk gave him in season one. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm trying to think some of the other things. I believe Sam and Miguel also start to kind of make amends in that episode as well. So a lot of groundwork for what we will eventually. Well, I believe was it 309 when Miguel and Sam go to the Miyagi-Do? And then he
Yes.
has his moment. Yeah, so
Yeah.
definitely a lot of groundwork into what we see in season four. With Kicks Get Chicks. Now, I feel like the titles don't they come a little bit later? Like you guys aren't like assigned titles right away.
No, I mean, sometimes we have one early on that, you know, just works, but I think that one came quite a bit later. I don't know exactly when, actually, but
Now,
I know that we had it when I was writing it.
did you guys ever like have just kind of like working titles like in the meantime, or do you guys like, oh, you have 406?
We just call it 406. In my head, I was calling it Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Because we knew like this is the episode where Johnny tries to recruit female students, and that's going to be the big centerpiece. So that's how we were thinking of it.
Now, is this more of a nod to the song or the movie? Well, I guess the movie's also a nod to the song.
Yeah, more the song I was thinking, but you know, either way.
Yeah, yeah. So the episode starts off with the boardroom, the committee. We got the introduction of Gavin, who takes the place of Daniel. Can you talk about like this big rule change and also I don't know. The trailer gave us something a little bit different, a little ominous. Did you guys kind of have like did you guys know that it would be kind of played out that way in the trailer, or did you guys kind of like see that afterwards and like, oh, that was a good idea?
I saw that afterwards. I don't know what input the guys had. I saw it afterwards and I thought, oh, that's great. And people are going to watch the episode and be like, oh, this is actually about the dumbest thing. Yeah, that discussion, the rule change, that was one of the big discussions we had in the room coming into season four. We have so many, you know, girls on the show now who are like such capable competitors. And, you know, thinking realistically, you know, in any real life competition, you're not going to have boys and girls competing against each other usually. So, you know, it just felt like it was time to have that separate competition. And it also felt like as long as we were expanding things, we could add in the skills competition as well. And so the All Valley Karate Board was kind of a way to set that up and explain the reasoning behind it. Some of those discussions reflected some of the actual discussions we had in the writer's room about like, this doesn't seem right. This is a little problematic to have boys hitting girls, right? Like, but that's one of the, I think, most fun sequences to write is those guys getting together because they care so much about the dumbest things and, you know, just I could write an entire script of them arguing about like the color of the mats. That would be great.
What about Sue's line and the demographic about like 40-year-old men and their sons or whatever it was?
Yeah, that one I didn't write that one. That is very meta. That is reflective of the show. I think it's like we do have
I would say
girls
so.
watching this show now. We should probably do something about that.
Yeah, because I'm almost there, and my 22-year-old son is a big fan of the show as well. So like,
Mhm.
I felt a little seen, but also kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
yeah. Now this episode also like, I said it at the beginning, and I'm not even kidding. Like, I love this episode because of the human interactions. Especially between the characters. Like, I enjoyed the fun and all the hijinks that Johnny gets himself into and all these things. But I really love the sit down and like the dialogue that helps, kind of move the story and gives us more layers of characters. And we'll get to one in particular. You brought in Tori's aunt. Can
Mhm.
you talk about that character? And also, we see Lynn in the background. And was there any kind of dialogue written for Lynn that was possibly cut?
I think there was a brief line for Lynn. We love Lynn. We love Susan Gallagher who plays Lynn. She's just hilarious. We try to bring her in wherever it makes sense. But yeah, so Tori's aunt. So the storyline with Tori and Amanda had been something we've been wanting to do all season, and things got moved around in different episodes. But she really features heavily in episodes 2 and I think 4 and 6 are the big moments for her, for Tori. So the aunt was something that we, had originally had in an earlier episode and didn't work. And then we were looking for a reason for Tori to go to Amanda. And we thought, this is the perfect place for the aunt to come in. And we can learn a little bit more about Tori's home life, the situation she's dealing with, and kind of give her a little bit of motivation to get her life together. She's someone who, doesn't care, thinks she can take care of herself. But now she has this threat of, your brother might get taken away from you if you don't start getting things together soon. And that's, it would have to be something that big to send her to the LaRussos.
Yeah, and I mean, just the conversation alone between the two, you find out some things. There's a mention of a dad, and and how estranged the aunt is when she's calling her own dang nephew like the wrong name. I think she calls him Bobby, and it's like Brandon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, really terrible. Like, you really get a look at her life and start to feel a little bit sorry for Tori if you haven't already. Tori was like, I think with season 4, I was really, really rooting for Tori and Robbie, especially when they got together, and it was set up, I believe, in 308 as well. Like, didn't they
Mm-hmm.
bump into each other at the JDH?
Yeah, that's their first run in 308. And they're, it's kind of Robbie's first moment of realizing that he might have more in common with this girl than he does with Sam. And she kind of plants it in his head that, Sam LaRusso might not be on your side. And then he goes and sees Sam and Miguel together and realizes, hey, Tori might have had a point. And that is part of what sends him to Cobra Kai at the end of the season.
See, and that's I've mentioned a number of times on the podcast that season 4 was the very first time I ever gotten screeners for anything, and so like to have a Cobra Kai screener, it was amazing. And so since I didn't know exactly what to do or anything, they sent me this email, and it's like, hey, if you're gonna do a non-spoiler review, do not include these spoilers. And I read the spoilers before
Yeah.
before writing the review or even watching the episodes. And so I got spoiled, which your episode also sets up the return of Aisha, which
Mm-hmm.
was obviously something that I think many of us didn't expect, especially with season 3 saying like, oh, well, she moved away. And so we're like, oh, wow, so we're not going to see Aisha anymore. But so when I'm watching it, knowing spoilers, and I saw that little clip that Gavin plays, I'm like, oh, this got to be the episode. How's this going to work? So even knowing that she was coming, I didn't know how it was going to fit in. And I just love how like every single one of you guys that we have spoken with have mentioned like, the cards and things that are moving around, and the idea of the cobras stealing a snake from the zoo was from season 2, or maybe
Yeah,
even as
might have
early as
been.
season 1,
Yeah.
possibly. So really early. And it's amazing that you guys keep shuffling things around, and it just seems to fit perfectly. Obviously, that's why you guys do it. And I feel like John Josh and Hayden kind of like have implied that this would never happen, but it's more tradition at this time. But I think the more we talk about it, the possibility of it happening could be a thing. But Bert shitting in a tuba.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I can
I
neither confirm nor deny.
yeah. All right, so we'll just keep bringing it up, and maybe we'll see it one day.
Yeah.
Um, now the yeah, Leon, I can't wait to see if that comes back because it just sets up so much. But Johnny recruiting, can you talk about Moon, so it's always nice to see Hannah return. And I really thought like, oh wow, so Moon's actually gonna join. So obviously when she talks about like hitting people, like it just makes sense. Like, okay, well she can't join karate. So can you talk about Moon and also bringing back Piper?
Yeah, so Piper was originally cast, the actress, in season two, and we found out after we cast her that she's an incredibly talented gymnast. And so, of course, for us, we're like, oh, well, she should fight someone then. So I think we knew that we had wanted to bring her back, and there was just no room in season three. They weren't really at school at all, and then season four with Johnny recruiting, trying to find his female champion, just seemed like the perfect place. And we knew that because the actress is so talented with stunts and gymnastics and all of that, she'd probably be too good for Johnny. Like she probably belongs in Cobra Kai. She's already a winner. There's nothing for Johnny to do here. So I think the idea of having him think that like, oh, this is the perfect girl, this is exactly who we need, and then miss out on that and kind of realize like, well, like Miguel tells him, you shouldn't be looking for someone who's already a champion. You should be looking for someone who you can build into a champion. And then he finds that in an unexpected place. But yeah, bringing Piper back is something that we had really wanted to do for a while, and it just fit perfectly into this episode.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I really love that because I think it's too easy to kind of like what you said, like she's too good for Eagle Fang, and so like I appreciate that. And it's just it's just a few minutes. And I think like many other shows, like they wouldn't have included something like that, like she would just maybe say no, decline, and it's there. So like I do like the idea of like Johnny's just like, well, she should have been here, and Miguel saying, well, I'll DM her to find out that she is already like posting things, because like all the swag from Cobra Kai. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
another
that
way of showing, the strength of Cobra Kai and what Johnny's up against is like he can't compete with, custom made sneakers and, all the incredible gear they have over there.
we don't even know if the warehouse is if he's actually there legally,
Oh,
like
no, he's not. No, of course he isn't.
Eli and Dimitri, the binary brothers, just a great scene. And I love Gianni in this as well, trying to kind of bring Hawk back into I guess he quits karate at this time. Can you talk about like the whole binary brothers thing? Like I don't know how you script something like that in terms of like him showing the video. Like, how do you guys talk about the sequences in the video that Dimitri shows Eli?
Yeah, that one I think was John, Josh, and Hayden, that those sequences. But we knew, I think, going into this episode that Hawk was going to be just really down, just really, out of it. And the only person who felt like was right to bring him back was Dimitri. I mean, his oldest friend and the person who kind of understands exactly how he feels in that moment. And so having Dimitri kind of pull back to their shared history of, look what dorks we used to be and still are. And, you were trying to hide all that under a mohawk, but that's not you. This is you. I think it just felt like a really powerful moment.
The line that Dimitri, where he refers to himself as Alfred, not Batman.
Yeah.
Can you shed some insight on that?
Yeah, I think Dimitri doesn't see himself as a hero at all. Like he's not even Robin. He's like the butler. He's just that far back. And he idolizes Hawk a little bit. Hawk is Batman, and he's just the guy who gets Batman drinks. That's all he's good for. And I think we see him sort of towards the end of the season in the tournament kind of realize like, oh no, I am better at this. Like I'm not great. Like I can't beat Robbie, but I did okay. And it's kind of a nice moment for him.
Were there any alternatives to Alfred?
Um, No, Alfred was the one that felt right. We were getting into like Marvel versus DC for a little bit, but Alfred was kind of like the guy, like not even the sidekick, but just the way like off to the side guy who felt right for that.
Yeah, I guess also like which version of Alfred are you talking about? Because like if it's was it Gotham Alfred is actually pretty badass.
Oh no, no,
So
no, no. We're talking like the old guy who like walks around with a tray. Like,
for the 60s, the Adam
yeah,
West Batman.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, one of the other sequences I really like is when Daniel follows Robbie into the convenience store.
Mhm.
And can you I think Joel talked about like how little the space was, and so I don't know how much changes they need to make during filming, but just kind of the um I guess that sequence, and also with like Terry Silver, was there any conscious decision or maybe some direction given to you as to when Terry would actually walk in on this conversation? Because I
Yeah.
like watching it back yesterday, I was kind of like, well, when was it? And you do hear the doorbell as he opens up the door.
Yeah, we wanted to give Daniel a chance to say his entire piece, and then to finish, his entire speech to Robbie. I think that is the first time that they speak to each other in, I think, the whole season.
I believe you're
Um,
right.
yeah, so we knew how powerful that was, and we wanted Daniel to have a chance to say his piece, but we also wanted Silver to kind of get the gist of what Daniel was saying. So we brought him in. I think I don't know if I had scripted exactly where he came in, but the idea was as close to the end as possible, just so he knows what's going on, but he doesn't need to hear the whole thing. And I think for Daniel, having been in Robbie's shoes, which is unique for him, they don't really have a ton of shared experiences, but he knows exactly what's going on with Silver and exactly what's he's going to do to Robbie. And for him to tell Robbie that, I think is very powerful.
Often we talk about how deliberate the writers are with the dialogue and just everything about the show. Was there like any kind of discussion, or maybe this is one of those like suspended your disbelief, but was there any discussion of how risky it was for Daniel to kind of wait in that area, next to the Cobra Kai dojo to just seek out to Robbie?
I think that Daniel, it was a risk, but Daniel's also not scared of anyone at that point. Like he has fought these people and won. So he knows it's a risk, but he also knows it's broad daylight. No one's dumb enough to, gang up on me and attack me. And I think he just cares that much about getting his piece across to Robbie that he's willing to take that risk.
And I suppose also in the previous episode, they kind of, just kind of verified and made it clear that okay, all right, we're not fighting before the tournament as well. I don't know if that applied to the senseis though,
I
but
don't think it's made explicit, but I think it can be, implied. I also think,
okay,
generally like they've settled on we're settling this at the tournament, that's going to be it. And I think for them, like they don't necessarily want to have it out themselves. They want to show whose philosophy is better and who's the better teacher, and the only way you do that is by winning the tournament.
right. Now I didn't get a chance to ask Bob this, and maybe you can give us some insight into it. But I know a lot of people in the fandom have kind of discussed, Daniel's reaction to the very first time he sees Terry Silver again in 405.
Mm.
Um, can you possibly talk about like if there was any discussion as to how Daniel would react? Because I think a lot of us were a little surprised, like, oh wow, he's where's that PTSD? I thought he would be a lot more scared, cower away, triggered or something. But to see him kind of like it almost looked like he was prepared for this day to come at some point. It was inevitable. Can you maybe shed some light?
Yeah, well, I think, he is reacting in a way that reflects his trauma from Karate Kid 3, in that you don't usually see Daniel get that angry and worked up as an adult. He's kind of reverting to his old, hothead ways. And that's kind of how he reacted first seeing Johnny as well. When he first saw the Cobra Kai sign, he jumped straight to anger. He wasn't like cowering or scared. He was just immediately like, I need to stop this. And so his reaction to Silver, I think, is reflective of that, of this man is a threat and I'm not going to run or hide because he's here to hurt people and I'm going to stop him.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because I guess I never really put too much thought into it, but kind of reviewing it recently, I was like, yeah, like it. I thought that it was a little bit different than I guess I had kind of imagined it would go down. But I do like what you say about him just kind of being angry, and we do see it with the kids too. Like, oh, I've never seen your dad so angry before too. So
Mhm.
there is an emphasis on that as well. Now I believe this was improvised, but there was a fist bump between Robbie and Nestor.
Yes, yeah, I think that was Tanner improvising that. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah. So I really like that because like it kind of gives that added layer like, oh, Robbie goes in there often enough
Hmm.
that he probably shoots the shit with Nestor, who doesn't like his dad.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
no,
kind
he
of share
probably
that.
spends a lot of time there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mentioned Aisha earlier. Can you talk about the discussion about bringing her back, as we did with Piper?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think our feeling is that anybody who's appeared in the Karate Kid movies or the show can come back at any time. With Aisha, I think, we felt her story, had very much concluded. She had been on a whole journey and using Johnny's teachings, but we also, know that she has a very close friendship with Sam. And we wanted to kind of bring her back in the moment where that was going to have the most impact for Sam. Sam in that moment really needs someone to talk to, someone who knows Tori a little bit and knows Johnny and knows the confusion that Sam's going through in this moment. And Aisha is really the only person who does. Um, and I think the advice that Aisha gives her can be taken in many different ways, and Sam maybe takes it in the worst way, which maybe not how Aisha intended it. Yeah, that was something that we had talked about doing, in the writers' room the whole season, and this just seemed like the perfect place where Sam was in a lot of turmoil and really needed a friend to lean on.
You mentioned something very interesting. So like Sam taking Aisha's advice kind of the wrong way. Is that the reasoning for Sam's smirk at the very end of the episode?
Yeah, I think that, Aisha tells her, like, yeah, just because my parents made me quit karate doesn't mean I can't use Johnny's lessons. And she's talking about using them to, in a good way to sort of stop the bullying before it begins. And Sam kind of takes that as a, well, just because my parents want me to make nice and be the bigger person, I don't necessarily have to do that. I can use Johnny's teachings and kind of be very aggressive and
Mm,
kind of stand up for myself and not be the, bigger person here, which is
yeah.
understandable given everything she's gone through.
Yeah, I had spoken with another content creator who kind of questioned that, and he was wondering if that was like a improv by Mary because um he thought it was just kind of I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the impression I got that he was kind of like, well, hold on now, because I guess he thought it was going to go one way, but that smirk kind of made him think something else or something. So I thought I would ask kind of clear that up. So
Yeah, I think Sam in that moment is feeling like I am going to put this girl in her place, and like everything she's done to me, I'm going to make her pay for it. And like, I'm not going to let her think, Sam thinks that Tori is, trying to get back into school just to mess with her. She doesn't trust her. And so she's making it clear, like, I know what you're up to. You're not getting one over on me. I'm in control here. And I think that smirk is kind of like a triumphant moment for her.
mhm. Now, obviously, I love the sequence with Nicole and Mary, and just kind of see them together again. Was there any discussion of how to maybe approach that scene? Like, was there even an idea of like possibly how come Sam couldn't just call her on the phone and there's a split screen, something like that?
Yeah, I think, from I'm sure Joel told you about this as well, but like from a filmmaking perspective, it's just so much more dynamic and interesting to see these two characters actually in the same space talking to each other. It's just, it's better for the actors. They can actually play off of each other, and it just feels like a stronger scene. So we did talk about, maybe doing it as a phone call, like how far away did Aisha move? But I think just from like a filmmaking perspective, it's going to feel better if you see the two actors in the same room speaking to each other.
Yeah, I guess if you want to go further, it also gives Sam, some time to kind of just reflect on things as she's like driving up to go see Aisha as well.
Yeah,
So
she has
kind
that
of
whole 2 hour drive to figure out
yeah,
her next step. So
clear her mind a little bit. We also have this just amazing sequence between Tori and Amanda. In my non-spoiler review, I wrote how, we're finally getting sequences with characters that we never thought that we would even see together. And this was definitely one of them. Can you talk about Tori visiting Amanda and also Amanda's backstory, where we're just like, oh, wow, that sounds like a Carrie Underwood song.
yes, I think the backstory had originally been written, I think, for episode 404. I think it was originally Stacey Harmon, but it didn't end up fitting into that episode. But we knew we wanted to work it in. I think the advantage of having a show with such a big cast and gets to run for 4 seasons and counting is that you get to find these unique pairings that kind of give you more insight into both characters. So, if you watch season 2 and we told you, by the way, Tori and Amanda are going to end up hanging out, you would be very confused. But I think we try to build to it in a way that makes sense over the course of several episodes. I think that relationship was something that we had wanted to do. Amanda is very much a fan favorite character, and we kind of see her aggressive side coming out in season 3. And we kind of wanted her to go through the same journey as many of the characters on the show of realizing, I might not be 100% right all the time. And this person who I hate maybe has reasons behind what they're doing. And maybe if I reach out, I can actually fix things. And giving her that backstory was a way of kind of making her more sympathetic to someone who, has had similar struggles and made mistakes. Amanda has ended up in a very good place, but I think she feels like she's maybe fortunate to do so. And I think, her acknowledging that is what lets her reach out to Tori, and Tori really needs that.
I'm kind of forgetting the actual detail in Amanda's backstory about her graduating. Did she not walk or did she not graduate?
I think she wasn't allowed to walk. I think we are saying that she did graduate.
Okay, because for a second I kind of forgotten. I'm like, well, if she didn't graduate, Daniel would have known, right? Because usually people have their graduation photo, or from graduation day rather. Like I know
Yeah.
my wife's parents' house, my in-laws. There's pictures of like all of the kids and her siblings and whatnot with the graduation photo. So I just kind of wondered. I was like, wow, there's some things that Daniel. I'm like, oh, so I'm surprised that he did not know about that. So
Yeah, I think, with that story, it's also enough that like she says, well, that's not a first date story. That's not something that you casually tell someone. And I think for her, she's hoping it's far enough in her past that you can just forget about it. But we'll have to see if the past comes back to bite her again.
ooh, possibly a little tease, maybe. You mentioned that her backstory was originally supposed to be 2 episodes previously.
Mhm.
Are the cards consistent or constantly moving around during production?
Not necessarily during production, but certainly during the writer's room and leading up to production. I think we had designated early on, like, okay, episodes 2, 4, and 6 are going to be the Tori episodes and the Amanda episodes and how their relationship evolves. And so by the end of episode 6, Amanda's actually helping Tori, but we knew it was going to take some time to get them there. And it's just a question of like what pieces fall into which episode.
So it's not like Stacey already started like writing that backstory before like it was decided that it would actually be moved to 406.
She might have actually. I'm not sure how far along she got with that, but I do know the actual story of the baseball bat and the math tutor. That was definitely Stacy.
Okay. Oh wow, that's very interesting. Um, yeah, that's just it is one of my favorite like moments in the entire fourth season is just Amanda and Tori. Um, as we get ready to wrap up, just a couple more sequences from this episode. The introduction of Devin. You
Mhm.
are holding on to that debate story, I believe. Maybe I'm not sure if we touched on it really, but yeah, the you also shared the somebody that you went up against. So that was a bit of a inspiration for her character.
Yeah, that was a real life inspiration. We knew we wanted a female character who was a little bit different than the girls we'd already had on the show and the other characters we've had on the show. We've had a lot of nerds on the show, so we didn't want to do like that exactly, but we liked the idea of somebody who's just like very intense and very aggressive and like I want to be the best at everything, but has just not applied that to karate yet. And then I think you see her and Johnny in episode 7 kind of starting to get along, and Johnny like finding respect for this girl who you would think, on the surface, they have nothing in common, but Johnny likes intensity and he likes the aggression. So we
Yeah.
thought that would be just a really fun pairing and that she could call him out on things in a way that, most of the boys are too scared to do.
Right. I mean, even Miguel, like, I think doesn't do that as much as he used to, I feel. Um, don't know if that's intentional, but I do like that. Um, with the book ripping, can you talk about that? It's just kind of added more aggression to her character.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I scripted that or if that was added in. It was, a couple years ago that we wrote this. I do know, however, that they had several books on set and she just kept ripping them so aggressively. They were worried they were going to run out because Una, the actress, was just getting so into it. She's really perfect for that role. I was really excited to see her in it.
It's crazy because like that's her first role too.
Yeah, yeah, she's really just made for it. She's great.
Yeah, yeah, she was I believe she only just turned 15 earlier this year or late last year, but do you have any knowledge about her auditioning process?
No, I was, not able to be on set for season 4, with COVID and everything. But I knew that they were casting a pretty wide net, and they, wanted someone who was the right age. And, you know, I think with that type of role, it can be really exciting to cast someone who's unknown and kind of bring someone very new into the world.
Okay. Yeah. Can't wait to see her. I mean, season five's got so many questions and kind of like, how are they going to do this in 10 episodes, 30 to 40 minutes each? And to kind of like bring back the whole thing about Tori's aunt and that conversation, clearly that made her make the decision like, you know what, I should probably go to school. I should probably graduate since, I dropped out and doesn't want to end up like her, I would imagine. So she, with the help of the LaRussos and Sam's uh, permission, I suppose, to have her return to school. Can you talk about that? And was that basically to kind of lead into the whole prom sequence, or what other reasons, other than like Tori wanted to finish school, was there um, for that dynamic with the characters?
Yeah, it was partly for prom, but it was mostly, we want to show Tori trying to improve. And we want to show, like all the characters on the show, that she is trying to become a better person in her own way, and that the people around her are influencing her in that. And for her, I think going back to school, it just felt like a really big moral step. It felt like something that she would have to go and ask the Russos for help with, which, it just felt like a huge concession for her and just a very big, just moment of character development for her. So yeah, getting her into prom was, part of the consideration, but it was mostly just for her. That is such a big thing to have to go to the LaRussos and ask for help. And we thought that that was, something she could ask for that would feel huge, and just show that she's really willing to make a change.
That is huge, and that's a big step for her character, especially like earlier. Now I'm kind of mixing up the seasons. I believe it was early in the season, 402, if I'm not mistaken, where Amanda, cost her job for showing up there, right?
Yeah,
Season four.
yeah, that's
Okay. Yeah.
402. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. So that happens, and so already there's the tension between those two, and then Tori coming to the Russo auto to drop off the Amanda, what are you even doing? That was cringy. But yeah, dropping off the groceries. I don't need your help to come back to her home, which she basically vandalized and
Mhm.
to ask this. It is a big step. Now do what Bob kind of mentioned, like a lot of the episodes were kind of like running roughly of 40-45 minutes, and there's a lot of trimming. Do you recall like any maybe some of your favorite lines or scenes, anything like that that was maybe removed for pacing purposes,
Well,
for
Bob always gets
406?
stuck with the long episodes, so that's most of his experience. But yeah, there was a scene with Robbie and Tori, sort of towards the beginning of the episode, where they're talking about going back to school, and I thought that was really fun, just because we'd originally had it, because Robbie's also not in school at the moment, and so we got a moment of him talking about that, and it was just a fun moment to develop their relationship a bit. But we ended up doing that a version of that scene instead of the two of them together in 408, and kind of developing that relationship a bit more. But I just really like that relationship. Would love to been able to do a version of that scene, but our episodes are always running long, and there just wasn't time.
And if I remember correctly from school, like I believe as long as like one person attended, you can have your plus one from like any other school. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's the reasoning behind like Robbie being able to attend even though he's out of
Mhm.
school.
Yeah.
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 So anything else that you want to share about 406?
Just that, it was my second episode of television ever. I'm very glad that people like it so much. I'm just really happy to get the chance to talk about it. It was really fun to write. It turned out amazing. The entire cast and crew did a great job, and yeah, I'm just really glad to have my name on it.
I do have one more question I just remembered, because I was thinking back to like some of your writing for Johnny. There's a
Mhm.
moment where he's showing off a flyer. Do you have any kind of input on like what goes on this flyer? Or is this like the art department or something like
I think that
that?
was the art department, but I think that flyer specifically is almost an exact recreation of his season 1 flyer, where it's just like learn to fight, and he just kind of wrote Eagle Fang instead of Cobra Kai. He's, not the most visually creative guy. Doesn't really have a handle on modern advertising just yet.
Because a friend of mine recently he was just like, because I asked him a question. He's like, I don't know if you want to know that because sometimes like not knowing is like a better answer than the real answer. But there is something that like I'm curious about because I don't know if I'll get the answer. But during 2020 when we started finally speaking with the writers, which I don't know why I never thought about reaching out to you guys from the get-go, but I was pitching to at the very least Stacy
Mhm.
and I believe Michael, and also Joan Lewan, that Johnny needs to have an Instagram. And he got one. He has an Instagram. It is on that flyer. So somebody
Yes.
was sharing it one day, and I was like, it made it in there. So I don't know, again, if it was the art department or me putting it out there in the internet.
I think, you manifested it. I think you put it into the universe and the universe responded.
I like that. I like that a lot. Mattea, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our discussion. And, since we know nothing about season 5 in the event, you are able to write episodes. Would love to have you back and pick your brain about those as well.
Yeah.
Are you active on social media at all that you want to kind of give any kind of handles out if people want to give you a follow?
I'm generally pretty quiet on social media. All I ever post is Cobra Kai trailers, so I don't think I'm really worth a follow. But thanks very much for the
Some
chance.
some
Yeah,
baseball games. You throw some stories up
I
in there.
do. Yeah, I go to the occasional baseball or soccer game, and that's about it. That's
Yeah,
most of my. Yeah.
I never got into any of those. I think I'm a simpleton. So like basketball, you just throw a ball into a hoop, and and it's 2 points or three sometimes. That's all the other games just seem very complex to me. And I
Yeah,
guess with like a bunch of kids, it's really hard for me to sit down and watch those longer ones.
that's fair enough.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we will definitely be in touch.
Thanks so much
And
for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And for the listeners at home, you guys know where to find us. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the audio podcast, obviously, and we'll talk to you later.